we have a lot of other terms, and we have a lot of definitions and relationships. When you step down from the all, from one, and you have two, now you have relationship. So going down many, many, many phases, imagine the all is just this one thing, and it branches down into these four, say, archangels, for example. And you have Raphael, Michelangelo, Gabriel, and Donatello to bring in the turtle and to make this fun and to make spirituality fun again. So Donatello is now 1/4 of the universe, and Michelangelo is now 1/4 of the universe. Are they going to agree about everything? Or might they have differences of opinion? You could also do this with earth, air, fire, and water. You could also add metal. You can add akasha. You can add shadow. This is what's called differentiation or disintegration. If you're saying water and fire are two different things, then you get into relativity. And relativity is a very, very interesting framework because you know one thing in the presence of its absence. How much does fire know itself if it's surrounded by mirrors? Will fire know itself much more if it's next to, say, a rock that isn't on fire? Suddenly, instead of just burning and heat and everything, you know, wow, that is solid. I am not solid. I am not even physical matter. I am dancing energy. And so the more we see things that are not us, the more we can realize who and what we are. Which is why sometimes having a nemesis or an enemy or an antagonist in fiction can help the hero break out of their poor me phase, or I don't want to become the hero, I'll just be an average Joe or an average Jane. They rise to the occasion, they rise to the mission. A really neat company called ePrize, founded by Josh Linkner, actually invented competitors because back in the early days of online giveaways, they had no competitors. And they would say, oh, our big imaginary pet competitor is going to do this or going to do that, or is coming out with a free waffle gun for every 1,000th order or something. And they'd be like, how do we top that? The purpose of contrast, the purpose of relationships is for self-knowledge, which can help clarity, which can help intent. So you might be thinking, how does all this help me magically? Well, looking at life and looking at knowing yourself, what is the self? We take this branching and it branches out more and more. And if you think about a taxonomy or a pantheon, you have 1, and then you have 2, and then you have 4, and then you have 8, and it keeps on going and going and going. So we have, say, just about 7.5 billion people in the world as this is being recorded, and when it's being viewed, maybe more, maybe less, depending on how history goes. And the question is each of those people an individual soul or part of the all? And the answer is both are true at once. And if you thought about or heard about or read about oversouls, oversouls are both a larger, greater divine force kind of collecting and organizing a soul group, and each of those souls is part of that oversoul. So organs are a really great analogy for this. You are a human being. You are one human being. Even if you have schizophrenia or multiple personality disorder, you're one human being. You have one heart. You have one stomach. Your heart and your stomach have their own independent agency. Just like individual people, they can do their own thing. But as a human being, generally in control, you can override those things. You can put certain things into your body. You can change your environment. You can change your breathing and affect how your heart and your stomach act. And if they really need to, they might take over. Your stomach might say, oh, there's poison, I'm gonna get rid of it. Your heart might say, things are pretty intense, I'm gonna chill out, or I'm gonna beat really fast to let this human know that has dominion over me, hey, things are too intense, chill out a bit. So if we think about society as a whole, what happens when each individual person wants to speak up and have agency over the society? Could that one person lead a revolution? Well, likely not. They could do certain strong, significant, meaningful acts depending on how they choose to act, or they could get 100,000 people together and lead a movement, lead a march, have a dream, share that dream, find other people who have that dream with them. And in a country of 300 million people, how many individuals will it take to stand up and say, actually, we want this country to be more compassionate, more loving, a little bit more differently. We want to override the whole. So there's this interesting two-way relationship when you get into a hierarchy of differentiation where you have dominion over the heart, but in some instances, the heart has dominion over you. Generally, governments have dominion over their citizens. Most countries don't allow you to leave that country without permission, without documentation. That's just how it is. But you can take certain actions to leave the country. If you do other actions, your freedom can be restricted even more and you can be locked up in jail. So it's a very interesting interplay being part of a whole. And it gets into an interplay of dominance. So we'd like to believe that we're all equal. And spiritually, philosophically, we can say that. But if you have a 200-pound wrestler and a newborn baby, and that newborn wrestler wants to pick the baby up and throw it across the room, to use an extreme example, he will, because he has that choice. But if you have, say, a referee, and she has authority over the wrestler, or maybe she has chains or ropes or something to physically restrain the wrestler from lifting up and throwing the baby, she can restrain the wrestler and put dominion over him. Now they could talk, they could get in philosophical agreement, but ultimately if there's two bodies that don't have exact cohesion, coherence, integration, synchronization, unification, integration, interesting, there's going to be some type of interplay. Who wins? Do they win through physical force? Do they win through persuasion, etc.? Generally, we're not really aware of all of our heart as its own consciousness, as its own thing, or our stomach. We have a lot of research out there, but who reads all the research on these things unless you're an expert? And even then, if you read all the research in all languages. So I'm saying this because as a soul, you may have dominion over your heart as a human being to some extent, but could there be something that has dominion over you? Now, if you're somebody who has believed in God or a goddess, or multiple gods or goddesses, or some other type of divine hierarchy, you've considered this. Whether you look at this from an atheistic standpoint of some person controlling a matrix simulation of which we are just computer programs just running, or some benevolent and kind larger entity controlling everything, it is reasonable to assume that you are / could be a cell in the body of God. So when people talk about God, goddess, rules of the divine, ways of being, that might just be the heart needing folate to function properly, the bones needing calcium to function properly. Does a human being need to pray to function properly? What is proper? These are interesting scenarios and interesting questions. And they also bring up an interesting topic of free will. And that can lead to a lot of really funky and trippy existential thoughts, but it's really important to share it with you, to be honest. Because say you want to manifest a dream home, getting this back down to something grounded, or manifest a new job, or a new romantic partner, or heal something back to the day-to-day. What if that thing that you want to manifest actually isn't ideal for you? What if the obese person wants a bucket of chicken wings and a giant gallon of milk chocolate and a carton of cigarettes? And they're staying at your place and they asked you to help them get themselves healthy again. You say, no, you can't have that stuff. You have dominion over them. And if you're that person and you want to become healthy, it's not in your best interest to do that stuff. So there's some point where there's conflict between what you want and what the other wants. Again, duality. You might want to run 10 miles without stopping just because it'd be really cool, but maybe your body isn't conditioned. Maybe your legs, your torso, your arms, your brain, your heart can't yet do that. So who has the free will? Do your muscles have dominion over you because they need certain types of nutrition that you don't have or don't want to take in if you don't like, doing that type of thing, if you don't like eating properly to prepare for a marathon? So it's an interesting kind of tug of war between, well, yeah, there is free will, but there's also this bigger equation. So the different factors of this equation, we have the all, we have individual souls, we have oversouls, which collect things. And if you think about organization in the human body, we have your consciousness, we have your body, we have your organ systems, we have your organs, we have the tissues of the organ, we have the cells of those organs, we have the DNA of the cells, and we have other cells kind of competing. So if you think about cells and organs and tissues, sometimes there's dead stuff that has to be shed to be gotten rid of. Sometimes there's new things that are generated. Sometimes there's change. The difference between a 10-year-old and a 20-year-old and a 40-year-old human being are quite significant. And those are at the DNA level and with environmental interactions and so many other forces. So why am I saying this? I'm saying this because there's such a big interplay of forces that if you want to create a change, you need to know where that change should come from, where will make the most impact. The reason why magic is useful isn't because it's cool, it's mystical, it's special, it's out there. It's because it taps into these higher forces. So if you want to build a dream house, you could just use your three-dimensional body, do the work, get the materials, learn whatever you have to learn, put them together, you've built your home. But if you want your dream house to manifest, to come into your awareness, to come into your being, to come into your experience, might it make sense to say find the goddess Lakshmi, pray to her, send her energy, say, hey, I recognize you as being a significant force in this world. Here's what I would love. Can you help me out a little bit? And maybe some material success comes to you after you do some sincere prayers, chant some mantras, do some sigils, do some other types of work, or even acknowledge the relationship. So the next video, we're going to talk a little bit about the nature of worship and how it makes logical sense. Stay tuned.